Hi guys, Frank V from Frozen Sand here with another episode working with power tools, and we're going to continue on with our conversion of Casa from Urban Terror 4.2 on the Intec 3 engine over into Urban Terror HD on Unreal 4. And purpose and intent behind this, of course, is to demonstrate some of the pitfalls and annoyances that I've run across over the past year through, let's say, experience as to what can cause failure as to expectations, how things are interacting with one another. And we'll stick as much as we can on topic, of course, and then save all the crossing the T's and dotting the I's for the artistic prerogative episode, which will complete the series out. So moving on, the most frustrating thing, of course, is maintaining an expected result. And we can accomplish that by just doing things in a logical, keep things in order, keep our house clean. We don't want things to kind of look as messy as my room does. So my studio does. So if you keep things in order, then it's easy. Problems are easy enough to track down and become a lot more apparent, rather than having things put in and haphazard and unorganized. And to start off with, this episode is going to cover structure, how to set things up towards finalizing. We are at that stage, finally at that stage, where we're going to make we've done all that we should do as far as staging everything and having ready-made assets and what have you. And then we're going to finalize that in this episode as far as how things are maintained and create a connectivity between 3ds Max and Unreal 4, where things can kind of nicely flow back and forth into it, and after a while it becomes a habit and transparent to you. It's not that difficult. It's just it's organization. It's not craftsmanship, so to speak. So what do we have? Okay, to go on to start a launch thing with a question that was asked by Johnny English, was how things should be laid out structure-wise. And Noel, the answer to that is, well, any way that you want to, because Unreal 4 is flexible enough that it keeps track of all the information as to dependencies that was really not available to anybody inside of Radiant, where you had to keep track of things like pathways as to connectivity to things like materials. Which, oh boy, it was rather a manual process. So if you applied a material, you had to go in and give the material proper name, and that name had to be have a specific name for as to what directory it would be kept in, and that's the kind of thing that Unreal 4 manages for you. You can kind of ignore it. So if you had to conform to some type of structure in the future, you can certainly just like say we need to put everything under the root. I work underneath a forked off underneath the content folder called Urban Terror _HD, and then put everything in there that has a dependency as far as being a connection to external applications, like in this case 3ds Max. So this keeps things in a logical order, so to speak. Anything above this is usually just tools that help me out with the development of the map ongoing. 9 times out of 10, I'll just create a shooter example project, and then start building my environment underneath that. So just so I can just hit the play button, and I can actually play in the editor. Can't do this in Radiant. This is not Urban Terror Actual, but I have tools available to me that allow me to do this, to kind of jump in and do some experimentation, and I get a better sense from a player's perspective exactly how this would look. Instead of in Radiant, all you can really do is kind of float around and look at things and say, well, that may or may not be to scale. I might have botched that up. It might work, it might not. In this case, you just hit play, boom, you're in, and you have that player's perspective, and you have a lot of different tools like that. I'll go over that a little bit more in the Ars Prerogative episode, where I'll be allowed to go off. There is no topic really. It's just filling in the holes. Okay, so from there, where are we connected as far as geometry goes? You can see that if I look underneath this folder here, and you've been following along, you know that matches up with my layers information here. So to get this out into Unreal 4 in this progression, before you could see before our process was basically grab stuff, throw it in there as one big block, and for the purpose of building specific types of assets that we needed to that needed to be included as part of that. Oh, excuse me. The bad case of hay fever is starting to kick up again, so I apologize for that. But we're going to have to suffer through it, unfortunately. Otherwise, we'll be doing this over and over and over again. So, anyways, what we were doing is we were creating what would more or less up to this point would be a scrap. You know, we can through iteration process. It doesn't matter. We can drag it in, see what it looks like. More or less, this gives us a kind of that connectivity where, you know, we're building our environment in an application, be it 3ds Max, Blender, or Maya, or whatever. Last time I'm going to say it that way. It gets a little bit repetitive, and we're doing by proxy an addition to be able to just, if we could, just kind of drop into 3ds Max here and run around with a gun as we can in Unreal 4, so that anything that we throw over in there becomes scrap. It becomes something that's disposable, and we really don't need it as far getting up to this point of putting things into organized blocks. Now each block is broken down by separate elements. I'll leave that for the artist's interpretation, whatever video that we'll do as to finalize things up. And I simply just select that, you know, use the layering tools that are available here, and I'll select a folder, and then I'll select this here, select highlighted objects and layers. So if I clicked on that, you can see that within that folder, within that layer, we have 41 objects that corresponds to the specific block section of this map. And you know, we're not being too concerned about you know, defining grid space and particular buildings and given proper naming and so forth. We just need a means to be able to identify what through a search what component is connected to what, and the numbering system works just fine. So with that kind of selection, we just do an export by selection, and if we go on to underneath my map conversion folder, Casa FBX, this is where I keep and maintain my my source chain as far as assets goes, the connectivity. You know, that way we can be able to flow stuff back and forth quite easily. If you're following along, you remember how I harped on the difference that FBX is not just an everyday format, and the ideal setup here would be just to be able to use a send to feature, send to Unreal 4, and everything becomes transparent. Hint, hint, hint. So the block I have selected is block 2, so I create a directory called block 2 and then save the entire package out underneath this folder. Now I don't really necessarily need to put it under a folder, but it's just one level of scene management that you'll see how that transposes into a little bit more organization underneath Unreal 4. So we'd export everything as part of this as a single package. Contained within this folder is the geometry and the kind of materials, the textures, anything that is dependent upon it, of all 41 objects as being selected. So I'll go ahead and cancel that because we don't really need to resave that again. I got that all sorted out and separated. Now let me see if I can just kind of find, hopefully I can find that folder. Okay, just give me a second here, guys. Okay, here's the folder as exported that you saw as to our exporting by selection, all divided and broken down. So here's our block 2 underneath the folder if we had actually done the export, and it's all sorted and what have you under individual directories. Everything on the top layer here, this is all scratch files, stuff that I use for testing. You can see I got test collision, which now has its own folder. I'm going to go with this root, I think, because it is a the layout is locked in, so I don't think it would be necessary to too much, it'll be additional work to kind of separate everything out into individual blocks, and we'll just deal with that as a batch as far as collision goes. So that's all been done. So anything that's underneath this root directory here is garbage, scratch files. We can delete that because they're no longer needed because we have everything properly sorted. Now, a requirement, okay, I think that's about it as far as creating that asset source chain. It's direct. I hope that's that the light bulb kind of goes on this kind of idea here. This is not just limited to just saying doing a map conversion, but if you're doing from scratch, eventually this type of organization, how things are structured, will work itself out. You don't have to start off with saying, well, I need to set this all up beforehand. It's iteration, 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 and everything and anything that you need to do, you can sort it out through that process. Okay, so we have a couple of extra components you can see in the scene that wasn't there before. We'll get into that now that we're moving over into actual Unreal 4 as to examination as to how things are done structurally. So to bring these blocks in as exported, all we have to do, let's see, I don't want to actually do the actual process because it is time consuming. So structure wise, I created a subfolder called urbanterror_HD. Under that I put the map name so it's easy to identify, in this case Casa. Underneath that I've created an environment folder which I can import all these static meshes into. Hopefully ultimately this is all just going to be geometry and nothing attached to it. I did export the files with materials and textures to maintain that connectivity. You remember in the previous episode, we were talking about collision, of how all the materials and got kind of botched up and misaligned. Based on what probably happened, I'm not going to go into search mode to figure out exactly what happened, but the ID changed, the material ID that corresponded to a particular type of material probably changed. So you can do multiple type of sub-object materials attached to a given object. I'll cover that in the next episode. And there was an ID mismatch. So the material that it should have had was on channel on material ID 1 was actually applied from ID channel number 2 when we start doing that subdivision breakdown. There was no material on ID 1, blah blah blah, etc. etc. So I brought that material in, but this is a good way to be able to keep the workflow working. Being forced into a proper workflow, being able to reconfigure what we need to be able to establish proper lighting and what have you on a separate element. I'll leave that once again for next episode. But if we were to select an object in the scene, can I get out of it? Oh, I actually had this expanded, don't I? I need to drag it down. If I select an object, there are parameters that are assigned to it, particularly in this case a light map override. By default, the light map that is created as demonstrated, let Unreal 4 create the light maps for you, which was pretty frustrating, and one of the reasons why I didn't get into doing in bulk conversion on some of the maps that we already possession of, was I wasn't about to spend days, weeks, maybe even months redoing light mapping information on every given surface as it's broken down. I would have been more inclined to just take the entire block here and connect it all and do everything as a sub-material type. Not a very good, efficient way for as far as maintaining high performance, as maximum high performance curve as possible. This is what we have as far as a single entity of how we broke things down into separate objects. We have obviously the surface geometry, the facade. This is a pretty good way of just doing the map overall. This is nothing geometry, although it's custom. It's not modular and it's not instant copy. It's nothing geometry, and it's specific and custom to a particular need. So we're not too worried about having to stick with doing component development. Certainly, it's how we configure a certain element that we need to be in it that will maintain its performance curve at with nothing more than just say, well, in this case, a slightly higher a slightly higher file size. Now, as a perspective, performance, of course, anytime you add something into an environment, there is a performance hit. But the question is it the same idea that spitting into the pool will make the water rise? Yeah, well, technically it does, but it doesn't really amount to much, does it? So that's this idea here. We have 24K worth of facade, and everything else that we put in into detailing. So far as this type of stuff here, we'll be able to do that through Instant Copy. Get into that stick-on topic. Yeah, okay. So with that selected and all the everything that I brought in, I've simply just selected it all and gave it an override lighting map of 256. Seriously too high, of course, but then what I'll do off camera when I get to the other side. I just want to make this work as far as lighting goes and what have you. So this will do the job. So if you're testing something out, select all of it and just give it an outrageous light map, and that will that will solve your problem. If you're looking at the map and you're going, oh wow, nothing that is really looking like it's supposed to in bulk in this type of configuration. You can select all your static meshes, give it a light map of 256. Outrageous, of course, but it will tell you right away whether or not that's actually the problem. So go big, so you can figure out how to go small, kind of thing. Bringing this in was simple enough. Just bring over the folder, create that connectivity. We're getting it down to the finalizing the stuff up. Just grab all these folders. I'm not going to do it because it's going to take forever to recompile all the materials and textures and what have you. A lot of sub-materials, it's like it takes about a half an hour to compile every little material and texture that I bring into it this way. But you just bring it in, drag it and drop, and what you land up with is, of course, is this. Oops. Under environment, you land up with a mirror of this into our subdirectory. Where are you? That looks like this. So you see we have now a connectivity. We go from 3ds Max to our FBX file into Unreal 4. So that way, if we do anything as far as corrections goes, most of the time we'll be doing that as a block. We'll be obviously making off camera, getting back to my normal workflow habits as far as detailing this out to completion. I'll get into my normal workflow habit of individual examination, of course, and building and what have you. But if we make a change, if I make a change to a given block, any element within a given block, I then export that block, and then you can just sort of select all to that FBX file, and then you can just sort of just do a re-import to include the new corrections back into our scene, and then those corrections will just kind of pop up, and we don't get that misalignment of our materials and textures, because everything is broken down by material, and I don't know where that block is. Okay, we won't mess around with that. So that way everything is corrected. Now from time to time you'll have to do a scratch. In other words, you're going to have to take the entire block that's in here, considering it is sorted out, grab everything and delete it out, because we've either added components or we've done some major changes that is too broad-based to mess around with, picking around with. Okay, I changed that, I changed that, I changed that. Oh, wait a minute, I added 3 more elements to it. Okay, or I reconfigured the entire block. So you can just take this one section, this one block, delete it out, scratch it, and then re-import it back from that from our source chain. This from our FBX bundle. So we can just kind of open that and take that. If we did a change in block 25, we just grab the block 25, drag and drop it in, and reintroduce it into the scene. Now everything is, of course, is done based on edit in place. So to make sure that everything kind of snaps into the same location, origin 000 in one app is the same as it is in the other. So to make sure that things kind of snap into place, you can see that at the top here, this is our location transform. So if you drag and drop it in, of course, your location is going to be different. You just reset it to default, snaps everything into place. So everything is Lego blocks. Snap, snap, snap. And it'll be exactly where it is. So if you're tempted to say, well, that's not quite lined up right, I better do it here. No, don't do it that way. Go to your source, back through your source chain. Always be updating through the source chain, through iteration, and nothing will break on you. Okay, something that was added. I must add, let's speed up the camera a bit here. No, it's a little too slow. Maybe about 5. Come on. Need a new mouse. It's a bit starting to get a little, gears are getting dirty, I guess. Okay, so anyways, what was added, you noticed in 3ds Max is these panels here. They're not textured materials or anything like that. These are sunblocks. You need sunblocks because the way the light maps are generated, of course, is from the directional lighting element as far as the direction the shadows are going. So without those sunblocks, the light will penetrate right through the wall, through the back facing, and create a light splash and shadowing effect that looks weird. Now to show that, here's a good area. This is a perfect example. We know that our light direction is coming from this way because that's the way I set it up. So the shadowing should be splashing across from left to right. But if we notice down here, the wall here is there's no shadowing. There should be shadowing in here, and that's sort of creeping across. We do have it at the top. Here's the top railing. Here's the shadowing from that railing, but nothing down here, and that's because there's no back facing to this wall. So our projection is going through that wall, and of course, boom, no shadowing effect. So that's to say, built everything fit to finish, no holes in the wall. Don't try to cheap out thinking that okay, I'll save 5 or 6 tris because I'm not putting any back facing onto it. Put the darn back facing onto it, and don't put any holes into your geometry, because if you want to release something as a prefab, it's going to be rather useless unless you expect somebody to go around and fill in that back facings in this kind of situation. So here's some more that has no back facing to it. So the expectation, of course, is weird type of shadowing effects that's going to occur over in this back area. And well, it's not too bad. That's probably because I do have rooftop here and a specific angle. If we drop that angle down too low, of course, once again, we're going to get a shadow and a light ribbon. So I think that more or less covers the requirement, how things are set up structurally, and we'll get into when we get into the next episode, we'll talk a little bit more. I don't know if I covered the idea what's going on here as far as the import goes. I did bring everything in with materials and textures into individual blocks, and once again, back to the question of how you should be setting up your structure is all that material and texture support each of the blocks, but that allows me to actually get in, and this is my master. Let's say my master material list of all the different materials that are going to be involved, that are going to be reassigned, and to reassign that, simply select the block, each of the blocks, and say this wall here, if it needs to have a different material, I just select the material in the browser, boom, and it reassigns the material to that element, and then over time I can just kind of delete, wean off of the training wheels, I'll call it the training wheel materials that 100% guaranteed that the materials will come in appropriately. Breaking things down. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next episode. You might be tempted to take a single unit and consolidate it as a single element, as part of a block, like a building. All the stuff that's connected to that building has been attached. Not a good idea. I would be more of the idea of going the other way around, which is what I'm probably going to experiment and do when I start getting onto my own workflow, is to take things and break it down even further. The benefit to that, of course, is each surface has its own material. Very efficient. Select that one material, and the more you break it down. So using this is a good example. If I take this wall, if I'm at this angle here, I don't see what's behind it. So the engine, it includes or calls it out and doesn't include it as part of the rendering. So all we see is this surface, and all that stuff behind there disappears. So if I break this down even further, then it gets a little bit more efficient. It doesn't through the nav it's connected or it's not connected. It keeps our sanity. Also, stuff like windows are limited to the block. So unlike if we select this window here, prior to breaking it down into blocks, we'd be selecting windows way over there too, and over there, and over there, and over there. So if we wanted to make that change just to this building here, we wanted to put in a new window set all the way around, then we can select that, and it gets highlighted. So something like this here too as well. We can break the windows down even further to make selection and deletion easier, and sort of call out all the old stuff. So structure-wise, we have something that's manageable as opposed to being ideal, we keep things in an orderly fashion. So that's probably what I think would be the major concern about most. Is cool, can I use an editing package to do that? Well, yeah, you can. It's a lot more. It's not so much about building stuff as it is about scene management, and hopefully through this series here, I'm able to kind of convey that a little bit. It does take a fair amount of experience. I wouldn't consider myself a master of 3ds Max, but I've been using it for quite a few years, so I know what works for me. So what else? I think that's more about it. But I'm going to show you one last little thing here. Talking about breaking things down into much more manageable packages. Let's take everything here, turn it off, and we'll take one block. We'll grab that. Go to edit a poly, and we'll do an attach. We'll make everything, all these 30 well, in this case 29 blocks. We'll combine them and consolidate this as one single model, one single element, and let's see what happens. So we select all of these, we say attach, boom, okay. First thing it does is first indication of, well, okay, we're going to have a bit of an issue. It's not a deal breaker, but this little attach option comes up. Match material IDs to materials. Okay, so yeah, okay, we need that. That way the materials that are applied are become the same. But what we've done, we'll bring this over here. Automatically what it does for us, and you might not know it unless you're right, if you are familiar with 3ds Max, is it created a multiple sub-object material type based on face ID, and then it assigns those materials to a given slot. So if we wanted to break this out, we would select the surface, select by ID, and anything that is assigned to that material is part of the sub-object material. So this, sure, you could do this. Unreal 4 will be more than happy to bring this in, but it's going to create the sub-material objects to the sub-material type of material as well. Not devastating, but not also it's you're adding something that can add exponentially to the performance hit. So if we did this same thing to everything on this map, if we say, for example, we said, oh, the heck with it, we'll just go into unhide all. Let's get insane here. Yes, let's hide all this stuff here. You certainly could do it this way if you wanted to. Let's get rid of all the folders that are not needed. We don't need collision. We don't need sunblock. Actually, we do need sunblock, but I won't include it in this case. And is there anything in here? Okay, so everything is fine and dandy. Let's go nuts. Let's say, for example, we just wanted to manage everything as one single block. We select everything. We go attach, match by material. Let's hope it doesn't crash on us. Come on. Okay, so boom, and we can move. Let's see if we can move that. Deselect, select. It all moves as one single unified block. We have one big, huge. OBFF stands for one big fracking file, and we can export that out over into Unreal 4, and it'll be totally playable. And of course we can use this as a scratch file if we wish. blah blah blah, etc., etc. But let's look at what is the insanity that you're setting yourself up for. Is okay. We have 99 materials. I'm not even sure if that's if we have a limitation of the 100. I know that Unreal 4 has some limitations, but boy, we're more or less what you're doing is you're doing like one huge gigantic render everything all at once type of process, and it's definitely not an optimal type of approach to it. So just pointing that out. Breaking things down into smaller objects, single materials equals good thing. Combining things and then attaching them to them. Think about what you're doing as if you do it as force of habit, you're actually adding over exponentially over time. It's like the spitting in the pool type of analogy, but in this case we're using a bloody flat fire hose, so to speak. So I just thought I'd point that out. That kind of finishes off this section on creating structure. Some of the things to be aware of as far as requirements, particularly light blocking. Don't put holes in your geometry. Not allowed anymore. Don't save a tris here or there. Fill in. No holes allowed. Okay, so no, anything else? No, that's about it. I don't think I've missed anything. We'll catch it up. Anything that's kind of falls through the hole in the final episode, which is coming up. I'm going to do that right after this one here, because I think I want to get back to working on this and get it done properly without having to stop every landmark process, part of the process. Okay, see ya. Bye.